Show you what the gauge does look like right now, and you can see it goes up to 31 feet, and it's now at about 23.5 feet. It has come up about a foot in the past hour or so, and folks that have been coming by just say this is incredible to see. They've just never seen anything like this.
It was still dark this morning at the Waterfront Park seawall, but volunteers were there doing their part. Right alongside City of Portland maintenance crews were everyday folks filling sandbags and forming a human chain to throw the bags onto trucks. What makes these folks drop everything at home and pick up shovels at the seawall? Some say they answered a public plea for help.
I saw the news this morning and they had pleaded for some help from carpenters to help reinforce the wall, and I don't know anything about carpentry, but I know how to handle a shovel.
And volunteers were rewarded with camaraderie and a good hot meal offered by several local restaurants.
It is pretty amazing. A lot of people down here and everybody's friendly and doing their job and however they can help.
The biggest body of it, the most important part is done. I'll tell you, 4 hours ago, I never would have bet on it. We had a lot of volunteers. We've had more city involvement too, and the volunteers, I think, is what really put it over the top.
The volunteers have done a stupendous job in getting all of this pretty well shored up. We've got plywood for most of the 2 miles along Waterfront Park, plywood and 30,000 bags of sand.
The Great Flood of '96 is the latest and possibly the worst in a long string of violent weather we've had this winter.
It all started on November 11th with our first big flood. We got twice as much rain as normal, and rising, rushing water forced hundreds from their homes and caused millions in damage. Then on December 9th, the big chill set in with the first ice storm of the season. A blanket of ice covered the Northwest and gave us our first adventure in driving. Just days later, on December 12th, that unforgettable windstorm blew in. Gusts of more than 100 miles per hour ripped through the coast and tore apart buildings. The Portland area saw the most violent winds since Columbus Day 1972. This time 30 million in damages and thousands left without power for days. Then a month later, we expected another windstorm but got surprise snow instead. Several inches piled up, then melted away just as fast. The wild winter hit again on January 27th, dumping nearly a foot of snow on much of the Northwest, creating a slippery problem for drivers who ignored advice to just stay home. The snow was still on the ground February 3rd when the rain came down, freezing rain. This thick layer of ice gave drivers their biggest challenge yet and made it tough to get around on foot. 2 days later, on February 5th, the first sign of the Great Flood of '96. Temperatures rose, the snow and ice melted away, and the rain came down, filling up creeks, turning roads into rivers, and making a muddy mess of thousands of homes and lives.
Now here's the deal. Salem is the area the Federal Emergency Management Agency chose to set up its main office to help people. But that money that's coming our way will help people all across the region, including in Portland. Now, when President Clinton visited the Northwest yesterday, he brought big bucks with him. Washington State will get $38 million to rebuild homes and roads. Oregon will get $22 million.
It is a symbol of what our country does when everybody pulls together and works together and forgets about their differences and focuses their attention and their hearts and their minds.
I don't think we emphasize that very much in our living today. We all tend to kind of go our own direction and do our own thing. And it's really neat to know that when the chips are down, you've got friends and neighbors that will pitch in and help.
Boy, it was the live interview that broke our hearts. This Salem man found himself facing overwhelming devastation, unable to fathom the idea of not moving back home again. Now, that flooding hit home all over Marion County, where I am now. Many people were surprised that streams like Mill Creek could just do so much damage. If you're not familiar with the area, Mill Creek runs through the middle of Salem. Reporter Ed Teachout was there when the flooding first began.
Sandbags are going down in hopes of cutting off the rising waters of Mill Creek. The stream is over its banks, flooding streets, and now threatening homes. Even though the water is already surrounding some houses, people remain optimistic sandbags will do the job.
Yeah, hope so. Yeah.
We're trying. That's about all we can do, I guess.
It's tough enough getting around Salem with storm drains backing water onto streets so they have to be closed. But now there's even a bigger problem. Mill Creek here is now spilling over the bridges that it once flowed under. That's causing backups all around town and major headaches for people just trying to move around Salem. High-clearance four-wheel drive trucks are about the only motorized vehicles making it down Ferry Street. Bikes work up to chain level. On foot works about the best, but you're going to get wet.
Where's the wood, Jeff? Where's the wood?
This man and his son were picking up logs floating all over the streets. He says he's preparing for the next round of wicked weather.
If we get hit with another cold snap, I'm going to need this wood. If we don't, I've got enough to make the winter.
So it's like a gold mine for you.
I love it, yeah, and I'm cleaning the street at the same time. And giving Jeffrey a ride. He's 3. He loves it.
One of the most amazing sights of last week's flooding and one of the big worries. Hundreds of thousands of gallons of raging water pouring over area dams. Welcome back, everybody. One of the areas that we're most concerned about, the Detroit Dam right here on the Santiam River, just east of Salem. That is a problem area, Steve.
That's right, Jeff. Federal workers who control the dam say the damage we're dealing with now could have been a whole lot worse. If they hadn't been able to control the dams across the west, like Detroit, would have seen much of downtown Portland underwater. Mark Hass shows us how technology is helping us to dodge disaster.
Engineers in Oregon filled the Detroit Dam to near capacity last week, trying to keep snow runoff out of the bulging Willamette. In Washington, other engineers at the Grand Coulee Dam released less than a third of its normal spill to slow down the mighty Columbia. And that was the story from the Willamette Valley all the way into Canada, where international treaties require Canadians to back up dams in the event of Columbia River flooding.
This is a good indication of kind of what happened up at Detroit.
Hydrologists in Portland use computer models to track the raging rivers. This is where they decide how much dams should release or hold back. And it worked. By balancing billions of gallons upriver, the Great Flood of '96 was not as devastating as it might have been.
So just how important is the control of dams during a flood? Well, the Army Corps of Engineers says if it weren't for dam controls, last week the Willamette River would have crested in Portland 7 feet higher than it did. Enough water to put Broadway Avenue in downtown Portland underwater.
Most of the flooding in Portland occurred along the banks of the Willamette. Without dams controlling the flow, the flooding would have been much worse. And in Salem, although there was considerable flooding, computer models show it would have been much worse without 13 dams and dikes backing up water. Officials estimate the dam saved $3 billion in damages. But that was last week. What about next week? Federal officials say even with rain in the forecast, there is no threat of more flooding.
We're in good shape right now from the perspective of what we see out there not being in until Saturday.
The Columbia and Willamette rivers remain high because the dams upstream are slowly emptying. That will give engineers more room behind those dams to handle whatever comes next. In Portland, Mark Hass, Channel 2 News.